Welcome to Life at the Deep End. We are your hosts, Jordan Bone
and Samantha Bromfield. After facing challenges of our own, we wanted our voices to be heard, to authentically share not only our stories and experiences, but life lessons we are learning along the way.
To show you that despite any struggle you may face, life can be fulfilling and amazing, because ultimately, you are the creator of your reality.
You may often feel alone, but we are here to confirm that you are not.
So let's dive into the deep end.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to Life at the Deep End. Today we are joined by my friend Holly, who was diagnosed with Crohn's disease back in 2018, and after a whirlwind 2 years of being very poorly, she underwent an ileostomy earlier this year. Holly shares her journey with us and how she's been able to change her mindset and the love that she has towards her body. Welcome to Life at the Deep End, Holly.
Hello, thank you for having me.
That's okay. So for many, this year has just been, well, I say for many, probably for everyone, this year has been a bit crazy for different sort of reasons. But for you, Holly, yourself, it's been a particularly intense year. And so I thought a good place to start for everyone listening is maybe like early days and leading up to your diagnosis.
Okay, so obviously, I don't know if anybody knows that I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease in June 2018. I suffered for quite a few years beforehand with sort of symptoms and sort of things like bad stomach cramps, really sensitive to different foods that I ate, but never anything sort of really worrying. I went to the doctors maybe a few times and they kind of just said, oh, it's just IBS, you'll be fine, just take some Buscopan and like you'll be absolutely fine, just watch what you eat and things like that. And then sort of a few months leading up to my diagnosis, I started to sort of be passing a lot of blood in the toilet. Sort of when I would empty my bowels, there would be sometimes just pure blood, and I thought, oh my goodness, this is actually terrifying. And you see these adverts on telly, like to do with talking to older people, like if you see blood in the toilet you might have the big C word and things like that. And I was thinking, oh my goodness, I'm gonna have to sort of go and see my doctor again because this is really bad. So I went in to see her. She didn't really at the start sound too concerned about it. She was just probably like, oh, it could be things like piles. And I was just like, I'm 22 years old. I don't think I've got piles. And they did sort of a couple of tests, blood tests and things like that. And it showed, they do like a particular blood test that can tell how much inflammation is in your body. And it showed that it was really, really bad inflammation, which is a key sign of having inflammatory bowel disease, which is what Crohn's disease is. It's a type of inflammatory bowel disease. So things just got worse and worse, and I ended up being hospitalised and diagnosed then. So it's all a little bit wild.
That seems crazy to me that it was only 2018. Does it seem like it's been a short period of time for you, or through everything you've been through? In my head I would have been like, surely that was like 4 or 5 years ago. You know, a lot has happened in these 2 years.
Yeah, definitely. It's sort of felt very sort of surreal that it's kind of happened so quickly, and I never really got the opportunity to live with Crohn's disease for a long time without having the operation that I've had done. And so lots of people kind of have a good 10-20 years before they sort of need surgery intervention, but I guess I was just a little bit unlucky or lucky.
So then
I don't know
flash
how you
forward to this year. Was it June or July that you went in for the surgery?
So July the 12th, I think it was. Yeah, July the 12th. And that was my
colostomy.
Fourth time in hospital.
Right way to pronounce it?
What was that, sorry?
Colostomy, is that the...
Yeah, so my type of stoma is an ileostomy.
Okay.
That's because I had my whole large bowel removed. So the part that is sort of made into the stoma is part of my small intestine. The colostomy is part of the large intestine, so it just differentiates which kind of stoma you've got.
And I saw you posted, it was a little while ago now, but I found it really interesting read about how, because you was 2 years ago marked up for the surgery, but then it didn't go ahead because you did go on to a different treatment, but obviously then this year you have, and you wrote about how the difference in how you would have handled it. And I think that for anybody, like, there's something you can take away from that, because you say about how everything does happen in a time that suits you. And
definitely,
how would you say you've changed since then?
I think you kind of grow as a person when you're diagnosed with something that's different. And I think if I'd have had the surgery straight away, I think it'd have just been really mind-blowing and just kind of like, oh my goodness, I've got this new disease, I have no idea what it is, and now I've got to deal with this surgery, this new part of my body. Whereas having it sort of a couple of years down the line, it's kind of given me time to realise what might happen. I know a lot of people say once you're diagnosed with Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis, there is a very high chance that you're going to end up having surgery, just because sometimes you run out of medication sort of either relatively quickly, or in my case quickly, or slowly, depends sort of how long down the line it works for you.
How have you been finding it since you've had the operation?
It was, I think, because I was so poorly, I was so desperate to have the operation. I was just like, right, get it out, I need it done, like we'll just have to deal with it on the other side. The first couple of weeks were really good, and I kind of was like, yeah, what is this? I can handle this. And then a couple of weeks in, it really hit me, and I was really kind of like, wow, this is me for the rest of my life. I've got to look at myself like this. I've got to deal with it every single day. It's very different to how life was before, but after sort of a couple of weeks crying about it and thinking, oh, boo-hoo, poor me, I kind of realised now, actually, I've been able to do everything I want to do.
Yeah.
And it's been fantastic, and I'm really, really happy that I had it done.
Amazing.
And that is such a mind shift, like, set thing, isn't it, Jordan? We always say about that life is going to offer up struggles and hardships along the way, and it is completely understandable and definitely needed time to have like a grieving stage.
Oh yeah,
definitely.
Which isn't always linear, again, you know, and not to say to you, oh, then you're going to feel crap in a few, but you know, like, it comes and goes, doesn't it? It's a journey. And I think that what you've just said though is the ideal outcome of being able to accept it as that, and be like, well, I've had this period of time where I'm feeling sorry for myself, rightly so, and I'm down about it, but what positives can I take from it? Like, I've seen your posts of the stuff you've been able to do that you haven't been able to do for such a long time, and I just think it's such an inspiration for everyone that reads it.
Absolutely. I was going to say, it is all about acceptance, isn't it? It's about having that time, like Sam just said, and acceptance is everything. And when you start to accept, you start to feel the freedom which comes with certain aspects of things that maybe seem uncomfortable. But then once you get over that uncomfortable period, you're like, okay, actually, I've got a life to live, and this is actually going to enhance it, as opposed to, you know, just seeing what we see or feeling the difference. It's like allowing ourselves to feel those things or emotions sometimes, but then going, actually, I've got a life to live now. I think that's really powerful, that, you know, the fact that you're so open about it as well, it just shows acceptance, and it shows that. And I think that's something that a lot of people would be so inspired to hear. There'll be so many people listening that perhaps have this and they don't want to share it, or they feel ashamed, like body shaming, they body shame themselves. And that happens a lot with so many things in life, and so many things with our bodies in all different ways. So I think this will really inspire people to embrace who they are and to accept things into their life that are going to enhance it.
And I'd say it's only really been the last few years that there's been more body diversity, I'd say, even probably like 4 or 5 years ago, you know. Now, is it misguided? I've seen they've got all sorts of different models and things like that. That never would have been the case before. And so I think that being more open and talking about it normalizes it, into the extent where it's like, oh, we shouldn't feel that embarrassment to be like you said, I'm a young girl, I can't talk about poo, or oh god, I can't talk about that, because that's where then the shame comes into it, isn't it? But if more people, like some people might even be completely embarrassed by it and not go seek help. And so I think that's where it's really good that people like yourself, Holly, are sharing their stories, because it probably does encourage people to think, oh, you know, something isn't quite right, maybe I should investigate it further.
There was actually a story in the news recently about a young guy who had these kind of symptoms and was too embarrassed and nervous to go and tell people about it. And the situation got so bad for him, he actually passed away because he didn't tell anyone. And it got so bad that sort of medication and surgery interventions were too late to help him. And he was only 20 years old. And you think, oh my goodness, like,
just from
you need to talk about things. It's not, if it's happening, you need to speak to somebody, because I mean, at the end of the day, it could save your life.
And it is such a relief finding people that will talk about things openly and that will address it, because I remember one of the first symptoms as such that I got with MS was my bladder issues, and there was a few other things as well. And so I remember being at the doctor's talking about these other things, and then when they said, well, have you suffered with incontinence or anything like this, I was like, no, I haven't. Because even sat there in the doctor's, I was so embarrassed. I was like, no, I haven't. So then he sent me through to go have a blood test, to which I knew the nurse and broke down in tears and was like, I've just lied. Like, it's not true. So it got resolved. But then after that, and all being said, it was after I was being diagnosed, I found other people with MS that were younger talking about their bladder issues, and it was just like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders, and I was like, oh my god, I'm not the only one. And so I think especially then with like Crohn's, ulcerative colitis, there are a lot of women and men out there that still, it's not that they're ashamed by it, but it's a private matter, like through and through. So you'd never judge anyone that wants to keep it private, fine. But I do think it's really important to have people like yourself showing and educating everyone.
And I think that's the power of the internet these days, isn't it? Like, you know, we can always say there's negatives to being online, but there's so many positives, and that people can feel that they're not alone. And it really proves that people aren't alone at all. And I just think it's amazing that you are doing this. So, yeah.
And going back to we had Sarah from the Birds Papaya on a few weeks back, and she spoke about people becoming more body neutral and not just seeing their bodies for what they look like, but what they can do as well. And I think that's a huge thing, because Holly, you've shared photos, haven't you, like with your bag, like not being like, oh, it's all got to be covered and everything like that. And so there's Billy Anderson. I think we both follow her, don't we, Holly? I've seen us like her
Billy's
stuff.
done a lot of stuff.
Yeah, she's incredible as well for being like a model out there that shows everything. And I'm so glad that times are changing, that the majority of people won't look at somebody that isn't society's like perfect body or norm and judge it. You know, I do think there's a shift in the last few years of moving in the right direction.
Yeah, definitely. I know I've felt it. I mean, before my surgery, I really hated the way that I looked, was constantly sort of upset because of the way that medication and things had changed my body. And yet after the surgery, it's a lot different to how it used to be, but I couldn't love it anymore because it's just so incredible what it's done, and I'm still alive on the other side. So I think for people showing that it's not just what bodies look like, it's how absolutely amazing they are. I mean, it's so important.
I think when you go through massive life changes, that's when you can really appreciate that, wow, it's still keeping me alive despite all it's going through, and I'm experiencing life despite all of these hardships. And our bodies are truly amazing, yet we can seem to criticize them so much, talk to them like as if they aren't us, and we're just so mean to them. But when you start to actually appreciate it, you're just like, you know, I am what I am and I am who I am. So I'm just going to embrace exactly who I am. So I think that's really powerful and important. And I just think this conversation is so needed. I think this is just so, I think so many people listening will, even if they're having symptoms, they may now go to the doctors. And I think that's just incredible.
And even anyone, you know, we'll also have a wide audience of people that aren't living without a chronic illness or a disability or anything, that feel shame around their body for whatever reason, you know, whether they're like, I'm too fat, I'm too thin, I'm too this, I'm too that, like. And I think this ties in so nicely to when we were talking to Sarah about seeing your body for more than what it looks like, for what it can do for you. Because I know a lot of people will take that aspect of it for granted. So not so much the way they look, because they might put a lot of effort into that through, you know, gym or whatever it is, but perhaps what it does for them they take for granted.
Yeah,
the fact it gets them up every morning and takes them on that run, or whatever it is, you know, allows them to do, is just kind of overlooked, because we do focus more on, but what does it look like?
Absolutely, yeah.
Like,
it's, I don't know whether it's sort of since I've taken more sort of consideration in noticing what my body does, that you sort of appreciate it more, because you know what's going on. Like, you know that your heart's beating and it's pumping all the blood around every second, and it's just mad how it can do it.
Yeah, it really is. If you stop and think, you're like, how am I sitting here?
Yeah. Like, it's just doing it forever, and we just take it for granted. And when we start, I do think when we go through things, we then don't take things for granted as much, and we just it's just being grateful for what we, you know, do have, and, you know, the health that we do have, as opposed to what, you know, we don't. Or and I think me and Sam has spoke about before about having, you know, body confidence but not being confident within your body. And I mean, that's something that's come up for me loads of times, and it's like, I love my body, but sometimes it doesn't always show up for me, although it does in most ways, in terms of keeping me alive. But in other ways, it can do things that are out of my control sometimes, and it can be frustrating for people, and it can be frustrating for me. And it's like, that's when we need to listen to the feedback it's given us, to rest or to do things that it needs to do, because it's given us these, you know, signs for a reason.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that the surgery that you've undergone, Holly, even exists is mind-blowing, isn't it? You know, what they can do these days to rectify things is just crazy. And not having that whole like body confidence, but not having confidence in your body, I suppose, would have really played into effect with you. So you posted like previously where you would have been at work but constantly worrying, like running back and forth to the toilet and stuff like that, where, like you said before, you could have absolutely been like, I'm 100% content with my body, like, I look great, I love me, but physically, is it like behaving the way I want it to? Whereas now you've been able to, you know, like you said, be completely comfortable in your own skin and have a better outlook on it.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, one thing that sticks out to me is, even just today, me and my partner Cameron, we took my little dog for a walk, just up and down through the village, and we did that once before my surgery, and I literally had to run home because I was in absolute agony, and I thought, oh my God, I'm going to end up pooing myself. I'm not going to be able to get home in time. Like, it was awful, that feeling of like, this is so horrible. And we went out today and we went for a good half hour and no problem at all. And I just can just do everything that I want to do. It's not holding me back anymore.
That's amazing. And that's just all that freedom that is given.
One of the last things I wanted to touch on as well is that when you have done like your blog posts and things, you'll end it with, if I quote this right, may every day be the best. And I think that positive outlook that you've had, I've seen the comments that you get, you know, has inspired so many people regardless of their situation. So even if they're not in a mirroring situation to yourself, and we've spoken loads of times in a supportive way, and ours are two completely different things, but it's that positive outlook that I think draws people to you. And how is that just the way you are? Like, how have you come to be that way?
I think I've always sort of been quite positive person.
Yeah.
Always sort of on show though, never to myself. But I think since all of this has happened, I have just had to be so positive. I think things that you go through in life sort of put you in a position where you have to turn around and be like, right, this is, every day isn't promised, and you have to live every day like it is your best day, because you never know what is around the corner.
I think that's probably very relatable to people, like you just said, being positive on the outside, like for the people, but not perhaps feeling it yourself. I imagine a lot of people feel that way.
Yeah, definitely. And even just to friends and family and at work, you put on a face and you're like, right, I can get through this day. And then you come home and you're an absolute mess and you're crying and it's awful. But I've just kind of learned to teach myself not to be like that anymore. It's taken a long time, but I'm really happy that I've got there. And I hope that me doing my blog posts kind of inspires other people to see that as well.
Oh, definitely will. 100%.
Yeah.
So where can everyone find you, Holly?
So I normally post on my Instagram and Facebook. It's just really low key, really. It's just kind of me explaining what goes on in my everyday life and how I deal with what's happened. So my Instagram is at Holly3112, and on Facebook I'm just Holly Mathias.
I'll put it all in like the show notes for it so people can follow you, because there's some fantastic posts on there that are, one, really educational as well. Like some of your longer ones, like you learn a lot from them, and two, also like I said, with that mindset that you've got, they leave you with that inspiring feeling, you know, like they leave you thinking like, she's right, you know, like go out there, get what you want, like have a positive life, like do it. So
I felt like it comes across like that. Oh, good.
I feel like I'm being educated on this podcast. So thank you so much for sharing. I think that is incredible. So thank you so much, Holly.
Oh, thank you for having me.
That's okay. And thanks for listening, everyone. And like I said, I'll leave all of Holly's details in the show notes if you want to go have a read up. And if anyone has any further questions or anything, then let us know or let Holly know. But we'll speak to you all next week.
Bye, guys.
Bye.